7/1, 8/1, 9/1, 10/1, 11/1, and Block 17809B, Parcel 12/1, and Block 17909B, Parcels 3/1 and 5/1. Exemptions. 2. 1. The amounts due by Captaluca LLC Limited and Captaluca LLC Properties Limited and Leeward Islands Resorts Limited under 8, Section 4.1 of the Accommodation Tax Act to pay accommodation tax in the amount of $10,514,604.97 EC due to the fraud. 4. Section 2 of the Tourism Levy Act to pay tourism levy in the amount of EC $532,435.31 due to the grant. C. Section 3 of the Interim Stabilization Levy to pay interim stabilization levy in the amount of EC $1,116,326.31 due to the grant. Section 1 of the D of the Trade, Business, Occupations and Professions Act to pay license fees in the amount of EC $68,400 and $400,400.01 EC due to the grant. And B, Section 16 of the Violation Rating Act, Section 7 of the Property Tax Act, number 10 of 2015, the amount of $621.09 to the grant, and are hereby remitted. And 2, the amount due by the Leeward Resort for lease payments in the amount of EC $5,382,581.95 in respect to the leasehold property leased from the town is hereby remitted. Condition 3, the remissions of Regulation 2 are conditional upon the sale of the Captaluca LLC Limited and of Captaluca LLC Properties Limited, the leasehold property, to a third party by 30th September 2016. Citation: these regulations will be cited in the Financial Administration and Audit Remission Regulations 2016. Mr. Speaker, I will use motion.
I make the second motion, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the citizens of Captaluca that we trace back to the 1972 Champagne Report entitled An Outline Development Plan for Tourism in Ecuador. The report included recommendations for outdoor expansion at Honest Bay. The first proposal for the development of Honest Bay site was made by Mr. James Franco, owner of the Lasset Manor Hotel in Friendson, Martin, in 1978. Another report, the Lassel's report, on Angola's tourism potential, identified Honest Bay as an outstanding site for hotel development. As the first step towards undertaking hotel development in the area, it was necessary for several tracts of land with separate ownership to be purchased and consolidated. In the 1970s, Mr. Speaker, the Angolan government received firm support of the British government in determining the best source of action regard to the promotion and development of a hotel at Morris Bay. Coopers and Lyman, with funding from the British government, completed a feasibility in 1970. The study pointedly commented that Anguilla needed a showplace as a prime requirement for promoting the development of tourism. It recommended that the government acquire lands required for hotel development at Morris Bay. The British government provided the funds of £155,000, which enabled the government to make the purchase. An agreement was made with James Frankwell in October 1979 for major hotel development at Morris Bay. Between 1980 and 1986, the project stalled. Mr. Frankwell failed to live up to his contractual obligations and commitments in the agreement, and he eventually assigned his interest in the lease agreement with the government to a Mr. Dion Friedland and other business associates. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the British government for the contribution that they made for the benefit of our group. To thank the government of that period for having the vision to approve and advance this initiative in the interest of the people of Anguilla as well. Mr. Speaker, the Anguillan government, with the funding of the British government, sought to jumpstart the Department of Tourism in Anguilla and took the unprecedented step of acquiring Morris Bay lands from private owners. Alternatively, the government could have approved the acquisition of these lands by Mr. James Frankwell through the private sale and purchase arrangement with the local landholders. However, the government preferred this route in light of the fact that it was a recommendation of the state, and the government would also be in a better position to direct the development of Crown lands. That is a position that we're in today, Mr. Speaker, and again, I would like to congratulate that vision and that advice from the consultants that the government of Anguilla put themselves in an ownership position with regards to those Crown lands. From the beginning of the development at Morris Bay, the Anguilla government saw this site as one of tremendous development potential. The actual development, comprising the 98-room Capitol Hotel, is the result of efforts by Mr. Robin Ricketts in 1986 to promote a project in the face of the failure of Mr. James Frankwell to complete the project detailed in the lease to him of the month and to attract investors to participate in the project. I'm sure Mr. Ricketts means Mr. Robin and Sue Ricketts. They are persons who are still here with us today, as have been a part of that original initiative to purchase our Capitol and restore the vision of the government of Anguilla when Mr. James Frankwell was unable to take the project forward. A lease was signed between the government and Leeward Islands Resorts on November 1st, 1986, which provided for the development of Crown lands at Morris Bay and Cove Bay, including Cove Pond, in 10 phases. The phases can be summarized as follows. I would like to thank and appreciate the government of 1986. That was a government led by Sir Emil Gums, which was responsible for assisting in the consummation of this lease, approving that lease to enable the project to start. The total number of rooms envisioned in the alien landowner license and lease to be developed at Morris Bay and Cove Bay is over 500 over a period of 30 years. You will note, Mr. Speaker, that we are at the 30-year period today, and Morris Bay Capital project still remains signed in 1986, demonstrate the government's understanding of the development potential of the area, the prominent place the area should have in the tourism industry, and the critical role envisaged for the development of this base site, in particular, in creating a showplace to serve the flagship of Angola's burgeoning tourism power. To a very great extent, Mr. Speaker, the actual development of Bonners Bay, Cove Bay, has fallen short of the terminal list. On the other hand, it is indisputable that Captain Lugo Hotel has realized the initial vision for the development of a flagship hotel at Bonners Bay. This was proposed by the consultants and accepted by the Angola government and supported by the British government when Bonners Bay lands were acquired for the Crown at the end of the British succeeded governments. And it is a vision that we, as a government, since April 22nd, 2016, have put to the top of our agenda and consider that the realization of that vision requires great sacrifice, sacrifices that even we would have had doubts of the level of sacrifice that should be made, but have concluded that it is critical for the people of Angola and the vision of those early leaders, those stars on which we stand, to have this project continue successfully into the future. Captain Lugo Hotel, through its highly successful competitive performance in the marketplace and strategic positioning of its product, has served to place Angola on the luxury tourism map and has been the flagship for the tourism industry as a whole. The shooting of NBC's television wedding program from Captain Lugo in November 2004 exemplifies the rich emotional dividends which have been realized from the performance of the hotel, in addition to the other financial and economic benefits. Captain Lugo has therefore realized in good measure the possibilities of the unique role envisaged for hotel development at Bonners Bay back in 1979. However, the impact of tourism development in that location could have been much greater were the commitments in the agreement between the government and the Rhode Island Resort Limited in 1981. And from the outset, the company was beset by battles over control and financial issues. In 1983, the Rhode Island Resort came under the control of Mr. Don Friedland, and in 1986, it fell back under the control of Mr. Charles Dickens. In November 1986, the Rhode Island Resort entered into a 99-year lease with a firm for property located at Bonners Bay and Cove Bay in Angola, now known as Captain Lugo. And the resort, as it is currently comprised, was developed. In 1986, Bonners Bay management was also incorporated. And from 1986 to 1990, there were a number of disputes. 1997 litigation and arbitration in New York. Eventually, the shares of the Rhode Island Resorts were put up for sale, and Mr. in acquiring them, and the Rhode Island Resort reverted to its control. In 2008, there was another change of ownership in the Rhode Island Resort, and Mr. Alan Aaron was appointed as Director and CEO of the Rhode Island Resort. And both the Rhode Island Resort and Bonners Bay management came to be owned by a corporate structure, including Captain Lugo Holdings Limited and Captain Mr. Adam Hale, relevant interest. A Court of Appeal agreement judgment resulted in a settlement agreement on the 6th of October 2010 between Mr. and Mrs. Hickox, Leeward Island Resort Limited, Captain Holdings Limited, Captain Properties Limited. Under the settlement agreement, $75.5 million was payable to Mr. Hickox in 3 tranches. One of $8 million, second of $27.5 million, and a third of $40 million. The $8 million was paid after some extension of time. The Leeward Island Resort was able to raise the money with funds from private investors, and Mr. Hickox is discharging his charges over some of the property. By the middle of 2011, Leeward Island Resort had failed to pay the second tranche of $27.5 million due to the Hickoxes under the settlement agreement. Mr. Hickox subsequently made demands for that sum. The formal demand was issued in October 2011. The directors and shareholders realized that Leeward Island Resort was unable to make that payment. And as a resolution was made on 7th November 2011 for a winding up in liquidation. A short time later, Mr. Speaker, on the 11th November 2011, an application was made to the court for a supervised liquidation of Leeward Island Resort. On that date, an order was made for a court supervised liquidation and the court appointed Mr. Wilcom Taker and Mr. Stuart McKellar and Zora BBI as joint liquidators of Leeward Island Resort. And a similar process also occurred for Mothers Bay Management. A number of you would recognize the name of Mr. William Taker. He's the administrator for the subsidiary offshore entities of the Northern Mines, CCD and NBE. Mr. Speaker, the joint liquidation's first task was to stabilize the company and keep the resort open for trading for purposes of liquidating binding land. The joint liquidators felt that closing the resort down at this stage would have been catastrophic on many levels. The joint liquidators also sought to achieve a restructure which will allow the resort to continue trading. Furthermore, at the time the liquidators were appointed, the Leeward Island Resort needed urgent funding, and a separate agreement was entered into on the 21st of November 2011 between the joint liquidators acting for LIR and Mr. Hickox for further funding that was secured over villas 4, 5, 6, and the ground floor of Villa 8. Mr. Speaker, that is the 29-30% of the units at Capchaluca that still remain unutilized. That has been an aspect of this dispute going forward in this period. Litigation subsequently ensued, and a number of applications were heard by the High Court on April 17, 2012 and May 4, 2012. The disputed issues related primarily to the appointment of the receiver under the venture, the court sanctioned a private treaty sale by LR of the remaining assets held by Leeward Island Resort, challenges to Mr. Hickox's auction on the 2nd May 2012, at the auction, and 2 other applications were made to remove the joint liquidators of LR and a petition to wind up. On 2nd May 2011, on 2nd May 2011, on 2nd May 2012, Mr. Hickox was successful in acquiring the asset for public auction when the credit bid $25 million. Gorilla was the only other bidder to participate in the auction, but discontinued bidding at $13 million US. Mr. Hickox artificially drove the bids up on more than one occasion to $25 million US. On the 4th May 2012, the judge ordered that the joint liquidators were authorized to sell the real property, chattels, and other assets held by the developer to Mr. and Mrs. Hickox for a total consideration of $10.3 million US. A sale agreement was finalized between the parties. Therefore, at this time, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Hickox possess beneficial ownership of the majority of the property since May 2012, with the exception of those villas owned by the Bureau. This position has been confirmed by the courts all the way to the Privy Council. Mr. Speaker, the government of Angola has been in negotiations with the Hickoxes to regularize operations of the property through the granting of an area landowner license and an MOU since the middle of 2015. So, Mr. Speaker, coming to office, we reversed the situation in which the Hickoxes found themselves after a decision made by the previous government not to grant an alien landowner license and an MOU. And we did that in the middle of 2015, approximately 2 months after ascending office. More recently, since February of this year, that's 2016, the government of Angola has been facilitating a trilateral negotiation process where the interests of Hickox will be sold to Carlton Strategic Ventures. Additionally, the interests of the Gorilla Group will also be bought by Carlton Strategic Ventures, which will result in a unified project once again. In other words, Mr. Speaker, the government of Angola is proceeding on this objective to regularize the situation at Kataluka, remove all those disputes in Kataluka which could not be done, and ensuring that the property in its entirety is transferred consolidated to one bank. And Mr. Speaker, we are hopeful that by the end of this week, we should be in a position to consummate this sale. I also want to say that we have been struggling since May 24th and negotiating. Since May 24th foreclosure, June 24th foreclosure, July 24th foreclosure, August 24th foreclosure, and now we have a closure final as far as we're concerned of September 30th. However, we continue to struggle. Reason why? Because it leaves no stones unturned in ensuring that the vision of governments 1977, 76, and the generosity of the United Kingdom government in that period as well is not violated in any way by these disputes that have been ongoing and for all intents and purposes promise to continue. The government does not take a serious decision to bring an end to it. The Hickoxes were granted an alien landowner license by this government having been refused an alien animal license by the previous government because of many policy reasons that my government, that this government does not share. And payment made by the checks were not cashed by that government. This means that for period May 2012 to the current time, the hotel has been operated by the Peacockses, who paid taxes due to the government, but the majority of these checks were never cashed, and of course are now still leaking and probably in a situation where they are unclear. The government is of the view that these debts are uncollectible due to the long period that has passed, and that in an effort to stabilize the property and sell that property with a clean slate to a new developer who can unify the property, it is necessary to forgive these debts with the public interest in accordance with Finance Administration Act. And I will demonstrate a little later, Mr. Speaker, why it is critical that this was done, this approach was taken. Mr. Speaker, a successful capital growth is in the vital public interest of Angola. Not only is it developed on Crown lands bought by the Massachusetts government and the people of Angola, it is also one of the largest employers in Angola, and its closure would be detrimental to Angola's development. In many respects, a thriving capital corp is more critical to Angola's national development today than it was in 2004, when the Ministry of Economic Development produced its report entitled Capital Corp, Cinderella of Angola's tourism industry, and why the government must play the part of Prince Charming and ensure a happy ending. That was a report developed by the Ministry of Finance of Economic Development at the time I was minister on the issue of Capital Corp and its importance for Angola's development. I want to repeat that title. Capital Corp, Cinderella of Angola's tourism industry, and why the government must play the part of Prince Charming and ensure a happy ending unfold. Firstly, the general economic and fiscal situation of the government of Angola was in a much better state at that time. It is imperative that a major employer, the capital, must continue to trade for the benefit of owners, employers, employees, suppliers, and the government of Angola. The Angolan economy, Mr. Speaker, only survived the closure of Mariana because of the exorbitant capacity of the economy at that time due to employment opportunities that Capital and Viceroy resource. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Speaker, to go regional on some of these issues, projects Angola's 2015 gross value added to be EC $862 million at current prices, with a growth rate of 2.56%. The contribution of the hotel and restaurant sector to approximate tourism is projected to be EC $145.5 million, or 19.73% of the gross value added product. The sector is projected to grow at an average of 2.74% per annum over the medium term. It is fair to say that the contribution of capital, one of the major properties of the island, has an important positive impact on the sector, which is a major contributor to the economy. It is critical that we put capital on a solid footing in the public interest. All sectors can be expected to be positively impacted due to the linkages to tourism. And the global economic crisis has already hit these sectors very hard. And any help that could be given would only benefit the country at large. Mr. Speaker, the most positive effect of a prosperous capital is sustained income by a significant portion of our workforce. As the wages of approximately 350 strong Julukans would be secured, and a rough estimate suggests that in excess of $12.46 million paid in wages and salaries projected by the Protection of Capital per annum is a major employer and major contribution to the economy. $12.46 million EC dollars in wages and salaries are paid by Capital per annum, annual basis, to the workers and the other providers, suppliers. Government, Mr. Speaker, will also be positively impacted by a new and reinvigorated capital through the collection of revenue in the short, medium, and long terms. The main areas that will be directly affected include accommodation tax, interim stabilization living, custom duties, business licenses, and liquor licenses, renewals and payment and lease payments. Other areas of revenue will be impacted directly due to an increase in consumption by the hotel employees and increased visitors. The most beneficial impact, Mr. Speaker, would be the confidence that would be gained by investors with regard to doing business in Angola, where Capital Lucca is again applied properly, as well as the feelings of improved job security for locals, especially in the tourism industry. It is the position of the government of Angola, Mr. Speaker, that the remittance of these past taxes and fees is in the best interest of Angola and in keeping with critical development imperatives and standards. A failed Capital Lucca would strike a devastating blow to our tourism product and would remove from the market what has been one of Angola's most endearing products for over a quarter of a century. Failure is not a word synonymous with Angola or its history. Mr. Speaker, I've been given that background, which I think was critical for setting the stage for a lot of what I have to see going forward. But what my colleagues will have to see going forward. Because the absence of the leader of the opposition, does that mean that we stand up at this honorable house and simply pass this bill without paying our responsibility, taking the responsibility that we have as elected officials to give the people of Angola the context in which we are making decisions? There are a number of persons within the community, Mr. Speaker, who would ask the question, could we not have achieved the same objective without these remission of funds? And that is the point to which we as a government would have had to make a decision. It's against that background that we would have had to make a decision. Mr. Speaker, I will read now a document that was sent to the government of Angola and basically via Capital with regards to the intentions of Capital to even not Capital of the owners of Capital in 2016 to further create an environment of instability, uncertainty, and dispute if the government of Angola did not take the action of bringing these issues to a head. Mr. Speaker, as I said before, it was our objective to make sure that Capital Lucca as a property was sustained and reopened and back in business. And therefore, we made sure that no stones were left unturned. Government of Angola, in our assessments, at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016, made an estimate of the impact the unresolved situation Angola had on government's revenues. And at that time, we estimated that it was somewhere in the region of $6 million, US dollars, or 16 million BC. While the estimates that we presented in this house today, because of the additional accumulation of certain arrears, lease payments, and the like, and the ongoing need to resolve this thing, that number I think as presented here is something in the region of 17 million EC dollars. Still over $6 million, but less than $7 million. I think the calculation is going to become bigger. But this is a letter, Mr. Speaker, the backdrop against which we decided that to resolve the capital issue, we had to make a decision. And Mr. Speaker, this is an addendum to a letter sent to us by Mr. Hickox in connection with his intention to pursue a claim for damages against the Captaluca Resort. A claim for damages against the government of Angola with regards to the Captaluca Resort. And he presented an opinion from his lawyers and a presentation in that. Captaluca Resort damages claim against the government of Angola. Further to extensive discussions and advice over the past 3 years in contemplation of filing a judicial review claim against the government of Angola, as set out below the salient points that demonstrate the legal basis for the damages claim. As you know, we have already substantively drafted the claim, but will not reproduce here the all detailed and documentary material in support of present purposes. It is my considerable opinion, this is a company of lawyers who gave this opinion, Lemons and Alexander, forum established in 1911, offices in Kingston, Jamaica, in various other parts of the world. It is my considerable opinion that Charles and Linda Hickox, Captaluca LLC Limited, and Captaluca LLC Properties Limited, jointly and separately, have a proper claim and is entitled to a claim substantial special damages in excess of US 25 million and potentially more by way of general damages, by way of a claim grounded in economic thought, interpenetrative business and business opportunities, reputational and brand damage for the following reasons. So, Mr. Speaker, in our effort to resolve outstanding revenues owed by Captaluca, the Hickoxes would have presented a claim, a damage claim, in connection with all the things that have been done before, the whole history of this issue going back to 2011. So, present this claim to the government. One, in October 2010, the Hickoxes entered into a rental settlement agreement with Liberal Resort and Soul shareholder, Captaluca Holdings, Captaluca Properties Limited, to resolve the judgment death ordered by the Court of Appeal, which at the time amounted to approximately $140 million US. They agreed to accept guaranteed payments of $75 million plus additional payments calculated as a percentage of the proceeds of the sale, lease, transfer, or disposal of reserves and others. In July 2011, Leeward Island Resorts failed to make the second tranche payment and defaulted on the settlement agreement. In the meantime, Leeward Island Resort was threatening closure of Captain Luca due to its cash flow crisis and its inability to meet its debts. This would mean the loss of employment to hundreds of employees and the shuttering of Angroa's flagship resort. First case, they interpret the Hickoxes are saying that they won the resort in 2011, and the owners at the time were unable to meet their commitments to the Hickoxes according to the procedures, and as a result, they decided to go. As a result, they decided to go into They would be Mrs. I think it's important to read this document because it outlines the issue. In the meantime, the Island Resort was threatening closure of Captain Luco due to its cash flow crisis and its inability to meet its debts. This would mean the loss of employment of hundreds of islanders and the shuttering of the top. This is in 2011. 2. The settlement agreement provided that upon event of a default, the shares in Leeward Island Resort would be transferred to the Hickoxes. Government's involvement mandated that Captain Luca remain. Starting in September 2011, with the knowledge that Leeward Island Resort was in default, and because of Leeward Island Resort's indication that they intended to close the Captain Luca Resort, the government of Angola, at the time, that is the past government, invited the Hickoxes to meet in an effort to jointly develop a plan to save Captain Luca and prevent its closure. The number of you who have that institutional will know if that is the case. The Hickoxes met with the Chief Minister and his son, Tate Hughes. The theme of the meeting was an absolute mandate that Captain Luca should remain open and that the government of Angola would do all that was necessary to ensure its continued operation. The government of Angola pressed the Hickoxes to intervene and to return to Captain Luca. The Hickoxes had been involved in Captain Luca since its conception, and in fact the resort was built and developed while under their control. We can well remember that time in 2011 when the past government, the leader of the past government, proclaimed that Mr. and Mrs. Hickox were the best thing since sliced bread for Angola. The Hickoxes returned to Angola in October 2011 after Adam Aaron had informed the government of Angola that Captain Luca would have to close because they were unable to meet their liabilities. The met with the Executive Council at the invitation of the Chief Minister and Minister of Finance, who wanted to know their position on assuming control of Capital, and to confirm that they were prepared to take the shares of the United Resort, who was still in default under the settlement agreement. To that end, negotiations on an MOU began between the government of Angola and the Hickox, and the complimented government of the day for trying hard to ensure that Captain Nuko was not closed and the number of employees during that period would not have lost their jobs. By a letter dated 3rd November 2011, the government stated that they were minded to approve the transfer of Leonidas shares to the Hickox. By November 7, 2011, negotiations of a new MOU to keep the resort open was 90% complete. The government of Angola then suddenly reneged on its representation and declined to approve the transfer of the allowed shares, which the Hickoxes were entitled to receive upon the intent of the default as defined by itself. Now, this is a statement from the Hickoxes attorneys. I have no way of confirming what took place in the negotiations, but the Hickoxes are alleging, and the laws are alleging, that the government of Angola suddenly reneged on its representations and declined to approve the transfer of the shares. In a move which, in hindsight, this is the Hickoxes and the laws who spoke before them, appeared to be coordinated. The Ibadan Resort was placed into voluntary liquidation by the sole shareholder and director, Alan Aaron, on 7 November 2011. On the basis of its insolvency, a joint legislation were appointed over the company. The Hickoxes, at the request of the liquidators, put up $3 million to allow the liquidators to keep Capital open and save immediate closure and loss of jobs. Despite it all, the Hickoxes in 2011 met their end of the bargain, as we can well recall in that occurred, and put up $3 million to allow the liquidators to keep Capital open and save closure and loss of jobs. Obviously, the Hickox had a vested interest in Capital, and they would have known that way to close. Any property that closes, it's difficult to reopen, and the mere aspect, the mere idea of closure will be detrimental to the brand and the future operations of Capital. So they were willing to put up $3 million and save immediate closure and loss of jobs. Government of Angola changed, of course, directly then to the Ibadan Resort being put into liquidation, which could have been avoided by the transfer of shares to the Hickoxes as provided by the settlement agreement. In other words, the Hickox are claiming in this document that the liquidation could have been prevented, avoided the transfer of shares to the Hickox was provided by the settlement agreement which was made in their appeal. As a result of the government of Angola's unexplained vote facet, whatever that means, correct, vote facet. Attorney General? Vote facet. Okay. The Hickoxes had to employ alternative to enforce the law under the settlement agreement. These alternative options were not as effective for the Hickoxes to recover their debt, and also claimed the Hickoxes were to expend significant additional sums. The Hickoxes require the majority of the real estate holdings in the River Resort comprising the Capital Resort, the sale by public auction, the exercise of powers of sale arising from the legal rights. The River Resort liquidators put up all the remaining real and personal, tangible and intangible assets outside the real estate over which the Hickox had registered land charges, particularly the right to administer, operate, and manage the resort, including all rental activities within the resort, and an assignment of the ground lease at a private treaty sale. Alternative to the sale, the liquidators sought court permission to close the resort. It was all the saga that had taken place since September 2011. After extensive and intensive competition, the Hickoxes were the highest bidder at $10.3 million on 30 April 2012. The Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court approved the sale of the resort assets to the Hickoxes. The sale was concluded by a sale and purchase agreement dated May 4, 2012. The Attorney General was present during all the litigation, including the application before the court, which culminated with the order that the sale of the remainder of Leoland Resort assets to the Hickoxes were approved. By the sale and purchase agreement concluded with the liquidators of the Leoland Resort, the lessor of the property from the government of Angola, the lessor of the property from the government of Angola, the Leoland Resort, the Hickoxes, acting through their corporate vehicle, Capluca LNC Limited, acquired all rights, not merely the real property, but also all intangible rights, which included the right to operate and manage the hotel. These rights, those rights, were clearly spelled out in the lease, and particularly as amended by the First Amendment of the NM lease dated 11 August 2010, which expressly incorporated the MOU dated 1st August 2010, entered into by the government of Angola with Capital Properties. The government of Angola had by then arbitrarily decided that it would prefer brother ownership to a Hickox ownership as the way forward. And from that point forward, took many steps to block the Hickox's path to a smooth transition of ownership. Mind you, this is the interpretation of the action that took place during that period by the Hickoxes, because here they are claiming that the government of Angola was partial to the brother ownership and did everything in their power to block the Hickox's path to a smooth transition of ownership. Whether this is substantial or true, this is a claim that is being made. And the speaker, those of us in this room, and those of us who listen on the radio can recall the intervention of a group called the Concerned Citizens, which comprise Mr. Sutcliffe Arts, Reverend Dr. Clinton Nance, and Bishop Errol Brooks, a group of citizens who looked into being in the matter and came to the conclusion that something was awry. The government of Angola was run away of and participated in the process leading to the conclusion of the sale and purchase agreement, which occurred by virtue of the order of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court dated 3rd April 2012, in the proceedings in which the government of Angola also appeared by the Attorney General, who took no objection to that sale. During the course of extensive arguments, which occupied an entire month in the court, the position that the successor entitled to LIR assumed the rights, interests, as well as obligations created by the lease and its various amendments, the declaration of covenants, and the MOU was never challenged or disputed by the Attorney General, who by his participation in the proceedings in fact acquiesced to the acknowledgement and record in the SPA. It would otherwise have been the professional duty of the Attorney General as an officer of the government and of the court to have made a contrary view known to the judge, who relied on the advice he was given by the parties. And I repeat that this is the interpretation of the Hickox Laws. To the acquisition of the resort, the Hickoxes entered into negotiations with the government and Angola for a new MOU. Notwithstanding the Hickoxes' primary position that the existing MOU was simply novated or motivated or novated, as it was a successor entitled to the Leeward Islands resort. The government of Angola insisted on negotiating certain terms which it claimed it was not happy with in the existing MOU. In breach of the terms of the lease, in the course of the negotiations between May 2011 and June 2014, the government of Angola attempted to resile from the existing MOU of 11 August 2010, which was incorporated into the lease. Committed to Captain Lugo, the Hickoxes embarked on the renovation of the resort, injecting an additional $15 million into the property, based on the MOU of 11 August 2010, which went along with it covers refurbishing Captain, which had been allowed to deteriorate and was no longer the jewel and the crown of the luxury resort offer. I can remember the renovation that took place at that time. I have no idea whether it was $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, or $15 million. The rental pool issue. The 4.5 privately owned villas, and I'm referring to the 30% of the property that was owned by other parties, are beachfront villas on leased government land and are therefore required by government policy in the terms of the MOU, the ground lease and declaration of covenants to be in hotel rental pool and available for sale to hotel guests when not occupied by the owners. The policy purpose of this requirement is so that the beachfront villas will continue to provide jobs and enhance the economy of India. Clause 22 parentheses, 3 parentheses, Roman 3 parentheses of the lease agreement made by the town and the Leeward Islands Resort on the 1st of November 1986 expressly provided that Leeward Islands Resorts will not underlet or part with possession of the demised premises or any part thereof, save to the extent of a sublease or license of a completed building or part thereof, provided that the sublease premises shall be used and managed solely as a hotel and an integral part of the luxury resort. And that such sublease or license shall be subject to an agreement or arrangement enforceable in law by the like lessee against a sublessee or licensee, that the part of the demised premises concerned shall be available or compulsory let on the application of competition to persons other than the sublessee or licensee, and that parts of the demised premises concerned shall be used and managed as an integral part of the luxury resort complex. It was therefore the intention of the Crown, the government, and Angola from the very outset that all available hotel rules should operate under a unified luxury resort offering, which is what we seek to do. Clause 11A of the addendum to lease agreement dated February 15, 2010 sets out the government policy once again, which requires that purchasers of interest in beachfront villas must include those villas in the hotel rental program under whatever management that resort was currently operating. When not occupied by the sublessees, and that the rental income so generated will be shared by the lessee and the sublessee, and then obtains even opportunity. It is therefore clear that the government of Angola recognizes the importance of beachfront units to overall operations of it and to Angola's tourism economy. The government of Angola expressly mandated the creation of occupant obligations. Government of Angola mandated the following clause to be included And in order to protect local employment and as well as tourism economy, the government requires that the tenant place the tenant's residence in the rental program. Accordingly, the tenant is required to place the tenant's residence in the rental program, subject to Section 11(5) thereof. Tenant acknowledges and agrees that the government requires the tenant utilize landlord as tenant's exclusive rental agent for purposes of entering the tenant's residence to occupants on a transient basis when tenant or its guests are not otherwise occupying the tenant's residence. In other words, every property on the beach, when not used by the owner of the subject, must be used for tourist purposes. In breach of the government policy, the alien landlord licenses for the sublease and the other resort development documents, the private villa owners padlocked their villas, the 4.5 villas, and prevented the inclusion in the resort pool in August 2012. The Hickoxes informed the government of Angola and the chief minister that these 4.5 villas were instrumental to Capital Group operation and to retaining its 300 plus employees. In other words, Mr. Speaker, we all know what we're referring to. We're referring to that 30% of Capital Group, which remains closed since 2012, which the Hickoxes are claiming and must have some substantial reason for so doing, that these properties are critical to Capital Group's success, and the government's failure to resolve that issue and allow them to operate in a manner which was prescribed by the previous MOU and as well reinforced by the present MOU on which they were operating at the time, required that this be done. And in that eventuality, it means that the government of Angola would have been putting the property, the ownership, the management, the operation of the capital in general. The government was asked on numerous occasions to force private villa owners to abide by the terms of the government policy and agreements. The government failed to enforce its own policy, so the villa owners entered the rental pool, and the villas remained padlocked and unavailable for almost 5 years. This has resulted in lost profit of capital. Business licenses and work permits, etc. Mr. Speaker, Chief Minister, you has ordered that nothing be granted to capital. Government again refused to renew the resort business licenses for management, operating restaurants, bars, retail, and water sports. Government refused to renew licenses for the management, for the operating of the restaurant, operating of the spa, the retail units, and the water sports. Capital was forced to shut down its boating operation for charters that included sunset cruises, snorkeling, etc. The Inland Revenue Department refused to renew the resort's certificate of good standing and tax clearances, which expired on November 24, 2012, stating that they were acting under instructions of the Ministry of Finance. Not this Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Finance of 2012-2015. Inland Revenue refused to renew the resort's certificate of good standing and tax clearance, which expired on November 24, 2012, stating that they were acting under the instructions of the Ministry of Finance. In other words, they did not do this because they felt that they should be done in the department, but they did it because they had instructions. Obviously, such instructions can only come from the top. None of the resort's work permit applications, including trainers, chefs, managers, consultants, and technicians, go well. As successors entitled to Legal Island Resort, the Hickoxes are entitled, this is their interpretation, without more to the concessions and benefits of the MOU as provided for by Clause 5. This includes a reasonable number of work permits for jobs advertised locally and for which no Anguillas qualify or even apply. Speaker, with regards to custom duty, the government of Angola imposes a custom duty on all goods purchased for the renovation. These were mechanical supplies and renovation materials for the reopening and necessary maintenance and operation. You will realize, Mr. Speaker, that in November they would have been preparing for the opening of it. At the same time, the government of Angola allowed the traditional exemptions of customs duty on reservations and materials for other hotel developers. In other words, they're saying that the government imposed customs duty on them for renovations, but they did not create a competitive environment with other hotel operators because they allowed them to have the usual concessions for renovations which apply in most MOUs. Let me come on to another subject. Government of Angola's reckless, negative public statements. Despite its 15 million renovation, Chief Minister Hughes declared Katilugo to be in a state, I quote, a state of rags and shambles. This, according to the Hickoxes and the lawyers, this was clearly a strategy by the Chief Minister to sabotage the result and create business interruption. This claim obviously becomes the result of the statements which we all know would have been made by the Chief Minister during that period of dispute between the government of Angola and the Hickoxes and the Hickoxes. Media reports of Katilugo's struggles with the government of Angola severely affected the hotel business, and the Hickoxes were almost continuously engaged in public relations, marketing, promotion, marketing, and brand damage control. Let me repeat that. Because of these negative statements that were put on daily press, the Hickoxes were continuously engaged in public relations, marketing, and brand damage control. This is obviously at a cost. The Chief Minister went further and publicly stated on several occasions that the Hickoxes were operating Katilugo illegally. Question is, this is the interpretation of the Hickoxes and the lawyers, and we have here in Angola to determine based on what we had ourselves whether or not this was exacerbated by the bringing of a whole unmeritorious motion to the House of Assembly on the 27th of August 2012 for the compulsory acquisition of Katilugo. The government has the right to bring the proper case for the compulsory acquisition of any property over which it has improperly just forfeited. This is a statement that is saved from the Hickoxes of the lawyers. An important factor, not to be overlooked, is that the government of Angola had no money to pay the compulsory acquisition of Katilugo Resort. Now, obviously, that's not their business. The only rational conclusion to be drawn from that action is that it was a deliberate attempt to further destabilize the operation of the resort. This is the interpretation of the Hickoxes. Obviously, if you look back at it, it may have legitimate grounds based on what we observed. These actions resulted in cancellation of guest reservations, which resulted in a revenue loss of approximately $1.283 million conservatively. As a result, both of the negative public statements and the reduction in the number of rooms available, the resort had no choice but to make several employees redundant. The cost of that service was $346,804, and we can rarely call to the number of employees at Katilugo and to be bigger, over 100 colleagues. As a result of government's actions and inaction, refusal to approve the transfer of Leeward Island shares to the Hickoxes in accordance with the enforcement provisions of the settlement agreement which Leeward Island Resort and its payment payers agreed to. B. Failure and refusal to enforce the policy applicable in Orlando that all beachfront villas must be included in the pool. Failure or refusal to approve the application of the Leeward Island license, which was submitted since September 2012, although in the special circumstances under the MOU, none were required. That's a claim. Failure and or refusal of work permitted or renewal applications for several key positions such as executive chef, engineer, technicians, financial control, food and beverage director, park, pastry chef, tailor, maintenance, plumber, guest access manager, vehicle maintenance, asset management. Requiring unprecedented payment of duties of materials imported for the refurbishment of capital in breach of the provisions of the August 2010 MOU. Bad publicity as a result of adverse statements made by the government of Bengal and in particular the Chief Minister, Minister of Tourism, and the threat of compulsory acquisition, the Hickoxes incur expenses and sustain damages as detailed in the tax claim. Claims for a total of over $25 billion. The government of Angola's tacit approval, support and or approval, litigation which commenced with the avoidable liquidation of Leeward Islands Resort and continued to all the court up to the Privy Council was sustained for over 4 years at tremendous cost. It is to be expected that any further litigation will, like all other litigation in connection with capital law, likely to ensue for a lengthy period during which not only the result, but Anguilla itself and its attraction as a tourism and investment destination will suffer. And finally, the legal opinion, and as always, you should be prepared. Mr. Speaker, facing another period of litigation and knowing full well that a number of these claims against the government of Angola had some merit. And it's not only the claim itself. The claim was 20 million, 25 million, 20 million, 15 million, 10 million, 5 million. It is obvious that there is something, somewhere, within that claim, which the government of Angola would have to respond. In addition to the claim would be the cost of governments with this litigation. And most importantly, the time that they have spent on litigation. And you will recall, Mr. Speaker, that the Hickoxes have been in litigation for over 25 years, up to 2011, and continue to be in litigation on various issues associated with that. And there is no reason for us not to believe that we will not continue litigation on this matter, because I am confident that there is something in this issue that must be done. The government of Angola, therefore, felt that it was wise in the context of taking this matter forward, in the interest of the people of Angola, the workers of capital, the business opportunities that can come as a result of the opening of capital, the revenue that will come to government of Angola. That the fact be rescued. Not only that aspect of the project owned by the Hickoxes, also those 4.5 billion, 4.5 villas, which represent 30% of the occupied rooms that Captain, which are now in a state of deterioration. That all these things be consolidated so we can have a unified Captain operating in the interest of the people. And that can only be achieved, Mr. Speaker, by Captain being under one ownership and an owner who is prepared to pay the cost which the developers have put up as wanting for their interest in Captain, as well as the costs that the Brotherhood, Macron, Manfredi, and the other persons who have ownership in those 4.5 villas, that their costs will also be met by that person, and the claims will therefore, those funds will be paid by a new owner who is willing to do this. Whether you question the cost to this owner and his ability to meet those costs is something that we have got to deal with. But I think the most important point right now is that the Captain could be revived and the workers could be calibrated flagship status and all these things be restored. Mr. Speaker, because of the urgency of this issue, is why we're in this also. And because of the complexity of the transactions involved in this sale, because this sale has a lot of moving parts. And even as we speak, the Ministry of Finance, the Attorney General Chambers, in officers in all those departments. The Honorable Attorney General just came to the office less than a month ago. And he has to be intimately involved in leading the legal aspects of this process forward. The Director of Lands and Survey, the former Secretary in the Ministry, the Director of Control of the Land Revenue, the Tourism Department, all the other agencies that are involved in taking this forward. They have to deal with the litigator, they have to deal with Freeland, they have to deal with Almira, they have to deal with the thriller group, which includes Macron, Manfredi, they have to deal with families, they have to deal with business licenses, they have to deal with all licenses, they have to deal with the buyers, they have to deal with MOUs and escrow, they have to deal with lenders who have been identified, operators being identified, deducts guarantee of release after these agreements are made, the hiccups dropping its claim against the government of Macron, and a whole host of standard measures. These all have got to come together with a neat package to make this thing work. And even up to the 11th, these negotiations, which have so far lasted over 7 months to be exact, will have to continue. Mr. Speaker, it is important that this be done. Having said all that, the resolution that we are bringing to this House today, even though it authorizes the remission of funds totaling some 17 million EC dollars, close to 17 million EC dollars, a little over 6 million US dollars. The conditions are that if the sale of Captain Nuko Limited, Captain Nuko Partners Limited, and the leasehold property are not made by or around the 30th of September 2016, these remissions fall away. In other become due and payable. Despite the fact that we're here, this is conditional on the sale of Captain Luca taking place. It is a necessary negotiating condition for the government will put in place to ensure that none of the parties involved are using this as an opportunity to escape any financial claims, any financial obligations or commitments to the government. Mr. Speaker, I have a number of colleagues who have been intimately involved in this process in the National House of Assembly. I want to thank all those officers in the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economic Development, at the these tables, the governor's office, past and present, Attorney General, past and present, the controllers of the American, all those persons who have been involved in the process, the governor, members of the Executive Council for their diligence, their hard work, and taking this forward. It has not been easy. But with the help of God, we hope and pray that this will be successfully concluded to the benefit of the people of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They wandered in the wilderness in a solitary way. They found no city to dwell in. Then they cried unto the Lord, and he led them by the right way. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to rise and support this. We have had a number of difficult decisions for the upward mobility and advancement of the nation since we came to office. And as I will talk with Mr. Speaker, coming out of Egypt's bondage, we have had to make a solid decision, despite all of the chatter and clamoring, to go forward. And we have had to face many, many odds. I want to remind the Anglians very briefly, Mr. Speaker, of the odds that we faced when we came to office. We had the war outside the ground. We had the water problems. We could not get the Tower and Fire Hall started. We had a number of issues with the banking institutions in Anguilla. And there was a lot of debate in the country about the benefits of solar energy. And Captain Luca is what is before us was in much disarray. The economy, joblessness, the struggles of the people were before us, the airport expansion, and throughout the country there was much spirit of hindrance. The Anguillian has put a lot of confidence in this government, in this team, and we decided that we would come to office and refuse to be in a state of paralysis. Decided that we had to go forward on a number of these issues. It has been tough decisions, but this one that is here before us today is also another tough decision that this government has had to make. But this decision, Mr. Speaker, is also time sensitive, and I make that point because even though the opposition is not present today, which in a way could be prophetic, because the spirit of hindrance has to be broken in this country, because Angola is facing very perilous times. And it is always very easy for persons to get up and say, I oppose this and I oppose that, for various reasons. But the reality of the moment, for this Captain Luca matter, for those who are listening to the Honorable Chief Minister, would understand the history and the pain associated with that history. Captain Luca has always gone through much turmoil over a number of decades. And it will be a joy for all of Anguilla to see Captain Luca come back to a place of unification and restoration for its economic benefits and advancement of the nation. As listed here on the paper, there are 5 areas in which these monies that we are dealing with today have been accumulated. And the Anguillian, over the last 8 years, has not found any relief from his expenses in these areas. But as the Chief Minister was pointing out, Mr. Speaker, Kabjuluka has been fragmented, and I think that the Anguillians will be happy to know that once again it can come back as one solid enterprise for the benefit of Anguilla. Jobs at Kabjuluka, I worked there for some period of time, and I came back to Anguilla in the mid-1990s, 96, 97, around there. Jobs at Kabjuluka went from 500 all the way down to 100. Sad, it was very sad. And Chief Minister listed a number of reasons. And I think all Anguillians who saw the pain and the suffering that came upon the nation because of the diminution of Kabjuluka have to ask themselves the question, who hurt you lately? And Mr. Speaker, the answer to that question is very obvious. Kabjuluka spiraled downward because there was an administration who refused to accept monies. There was an administration who proclaimed that Kabjuluka was operating illegally and placed the government in a precarious position to be facing a lawsuit. I'm happy today that we are at a point where we can move on and overcome all of these hurdles. It is some 17 million EC dollars that we're talking about here, Mr. Speaker. It is not a trivial sum of money. It is a substantial amount of money. $6 million US dollars, roughly. And this, Mr. Speaker, comes on the back of the Anguillian once again. As it is with property tax, as it is with many things that we have had to face in this government, we are once again here today to ask the Anguillian to shoulder the burden of making Anguilla great again. But today I applaud the Anguillian. I applaud the investors as well. But specifically today I want to applaud the Anguillian, Mr. Speaker, because when all is said and done, it is really on the backs of the Anguillian that this government is marching forward from strength to strength. The Anguillian, Mr. Speaker, though under much great pressure and stress, is a visionary today in this matter. Of $17 million, some $6 million US dollars. And why is the Anguillian a visionary, Mr. Speaker? He's a visionary because despite the pain that he has to endure, he understands it is necessary for several reasons. And it is necessary, Mr. Speaker, for several reasons. One being the national economic futuristic potential. And the Anguillian, even though he's given up 17 million, he knows that the national economic futuristic potential is priceless. The unification of Kabjuluka is another reason that is priceless. The creation of jobs, restoring Kabjuluka's employment capacity back up to 500 plus, including the construction that will follow. The Anguilla knows that that also is priceless. The promotion of Anguilla as still a destination for people to come and invest their monies in a safe manner, the Anguilla knows that that also is priceless. The business opportunities that will be created for decades to come, the Anguilla knows, despite the fact that he has to give up $17 million today, he knows that for the business opportunities for decades to come, what he is doing today will be thought as priceless. We said in the campaign, Mr. Speaker, that we will fix it, and we are. With the help and support of our distinguished citizens, we are going to fix it. We know the Anguillian is shouldering the burden and the weight, but it is true no matter what they say. It is true, and it was true in the campaign, that it is all about the Anguillian. We are here today because Kabjuluka's restoration and advancement is all about you. It's all about the Anguillian. Everything left to be done is being done, Mr. Speaker. Everything left undone is being done. Everything when we came to office that was left in confusion is getting clarity. Mr. Speaker, everyone who was left in the wilderness will eventually enter the promised land. Psalms 126, when I prayed this morning, and when Mr. Banks said volte face, volte face, and the AG clarified that it was vote fast. That's correct, AG? I'm sounding good. That's vote fast. And I said to the AG, I don't quite understand what it means. Could you tell me? And he wrote on the paper, it means turn around. And I was very happy that the Chief Minister, even though we did not have any discussion, Mr. Speaker, came up with that word, and I will give it to the Anglican today to hold on to, vote fast. It's a turnaround. When the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. We were bamboozled, as many of us are in Angola today. Then said they among the heathen, Mr. Speaker, those who are steeped in unbelief, those in Angola who are lost in mockery. Very soon they will say among themselves, the Lord has done great things for us as a nation, wherever our hearts have been made glad. Turn again our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. And Mr. Speaker, that is important because in life, if you want to know about turning things around, it is always very good, Mr. Speaker, as in the case of Captain Luca, to have a strong witness. And the Angolian, for as long as he has lived in Angola, he has a strong witness. And I would just like to highlight very briefly what is the witness that we hold as Angolians. Out of a candle, Mr. Speaker, dripping wax, the Angolian now can point to the great Angle. Our ancestors walked down dirt roads, but today we drive down miles and miles of asphalt. Out of our rags and flour bags, Mr. Speaker, the Angolian now today wears cotton, linen, and silk. And Mr. Speaker, out of 3 fire rocks, the Angolian now has a kitchen of Korean granite and marble. We have come a mighty long way. And there are things, even though we are boarded as Angolians today, for which we can still be glad, because there is a witness. We have seen the streams in the southern. And the psalm goes on, Mr. Speaker, to say, he that goeth forth, bearing precious seed, even though he is sowing in tears, he shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. And I have no doubt, despite the trying times and the frustration that we have faced as a government under enormous pressure, that things are turning around. And I believe that in short order, by God's great help and providence, we will be able to have the Angolian, even though he has sown in tears, to be bringing in his sheaves with him. I therefore, Mr. Speaker, very briefly, before I take my seat, would like to acknowledge those who stood in the gap, in particular the clergy of this great nation. It has made a difference, Mr. Speaker, over the last 8 years. Pastor Philip Gumbs, Dr. Kathleen Richardson, Aitan Connor, Pastor Aitan Connor, the Apostle Lucien McDonough, Pastor Jerome Rogers, he plays music very often on the station, Bishop Sandy Daniels, Bishop Brooks, Aaron Brooks, and even Elder Deacon, not sure what his title is, Mr. Speaker, Elkin Richardson. Not for his talk show on a Monday, but on a Sunday he plays gospel music. And all of these persons, Mr. Speaker, have gone out in a spiritual effort, among others, to make sure that the message of hope and what God can do in reviving the nation remains a solid message in our community, and I want to thank them. There is a witness in Angola. We have lived it. And we also have Dr. Wycliffe Gumbs in the Methodist Church, among many others. They have done our country proud in standing in the gap with a message of hope that God is still able. It has been some 8 years, Mr. Speaker, And as you rightly heard the Chief Minister this morning speaking, Kelly Lucas saga has been going on in many different aspects for many, many decades. It is my premise, Mr. Speaker, that today the ingredient in supporting this government with this measure will bring a strong end to this matter, and we pray that Anguilla will resonate. I still believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And no person I'm making right now.
Can you mute the stream?
It's off.
listening to the Chief Minister from District 4 as he deliberated the saga of Capjaluca and the possibilities of litigation. It is clear that the government of Anguilla has no other alternative but to come to a decision in this matter. And I want to just briefly comment on the resolution and what I think about it. One of the tasks of a government is to determine cause and identify solutions. We must weigh the need for concessions that can attract investors and business enterprise. This is most important if those concessions can help alleviate the financial conditions of our country. It is necessary because it promotes job opportunities which can drive economic prosperity and upward mobility. It is necessary if ultimately it benefits Anguilla. In these difficult economic times, Mr. Speaker, all decisions have to be measured carefully against the possible outcomes. One of these conditions relates to the impetus of Capjaluca and its impact on our country, both economically and otherwise. Mr. Speaker, doing nothing. Our decisions will make Capjaluca a driving force for job opportunity. Doing nothing would create a failed enterprise sitting on prime land in the West End. Mr. Speaker, the catastrophe of doing nothing would eclipse the concessions made. It would deprive us of much needed employment. And one may concur that there's no better way, but this ought not to be a political issue. Mr. Speaker, it can't be when our people's dependency on Capjaluca stands so high. Anguilla has everything to lose if this project was to close today. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this resolution because I believe personally we cannot defer for tomorrow what is relevant today. We cannot. The decision taken by the government, therefore, Mr. Speaker, I stand in solution and I stand to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Rottenberg.
Mr. Speaker, I stand here in this honorable house along with my colleagues to offer my support for the passage of this motion, as well as to make a few observations. Mr. Speaker, this motion has been very well articulated and placed into historical context by our Honorable Chief Minister, who I know has the institutional knowledge along with some other members of the House as it relates to the Capjaluca saga, which we all know has been going on for a number of years. And I have no doubt this morning, Mr. Speaker, that throughout the length and breadth of Anguilla, persons would be somewhat relieved to know that there is a resolution of this matter in sight. Mr. Speaker, Capjaluca has been regarded as the flagship property in Anguilla. Over a number of years, it has provided employment for a number of our people. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I believe that I can safely say that most or all of what some of us have here in Anguilla is as a result of Capjaluca. And it is therefore an indisputable fact that that property has been one of the main engines of economic activity in Anguilla. And on the face of it, Mr. Speaker, it might appear that permitting or forgiving this debt does not sound like sound fiscal sound like sound fiscal decision, particularly at these difficult times. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, that given the present economic situation in Anguilla, we all have to be prepared to give up something to get something in return. Moreover, when the livelihoods of so many of our people are at stake. And Mr. Speaker, it won't be very long because I know that there are other speakers who know even more about the Catholica issue than I do. But what I would say, Mr. Speaker, that if this is what it takes to move this motion this morning, to have this long overdue and outstanding matter resolved in an effort to bring back some aspects of economic prosperity and activity in Anguilla, then it has my full support. And I'm sure that, Mr. Speaker, the majority of us in Anguilla would love to see Kajuluka return to its former glory for the benefit of all of us. That's my deep contribution this morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable, please stand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm rising in relation to the motion that we have on the floor now. And I want to first say, Mr. Speaker, that in about 2013, and just a little bit of background as to what the position is here. In about 2013, before Webster, it was at that time known as Webster Agriculture, was involved in the creation of Charles and Community Parks in relation to legal fees. My firm represented the access at that time. It was actually 2013. And so actually the matter concluded in 2015. As a result, when discussions on Kajuluka rules actually took office in April of 2015, I raised the matter in the Executive Council with the Chief Minister, the other ministers of the government, the ex-governor, at the time signed the and it was decided at that time that I would take no or limited involvement in the Kajuluka issues. And so, Mr. Speaker, as a result of that, my role will have been limited to some extent. However, Mr. Speaker, the member for Valley South has been, as he reminds us on more than one occasion, that he's been in government politics for over 36 years. And the member for Valley North has been involved in politics for 10 years. And so, while it is that my role would have been limited, we would have had seasoned persons from many of the categories that would be involved in this matter. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, that Kajuluka, because of the issues that have arisen in so many years, in excess of 25 years, did not even hear I am Kajuluka. And with the exception of the member of Valley South, he is probably the one that can say that Kajuluka came. And so, after taking office in April 2015, this government met the Kajuluka issue, which has still been largely unresolved. At the time, it was in flux with the then of the previous government and this government, which they did. It is, Mr. Speaker, the Kajuluka decision that we are here in front of you today is a difficult decision for this government to make. But it's a decision that we have had to make in order to ensure that Kajuluka continues to remain the flagship of the hotel industry in Anguilla, as this so well referred to. The vision of this government in relation to Kajuluka is that of a unified hotel with all of the rooms fully functioning and operating. A vision of full employment, and in the initial days, there was about 400 employees at Capjuluka. And the idea is to get back to full employment and possibly even more. As it is right now, there are approximately 220 employees at that hotel, which would mean getting back to full would be an additional 180 persons, potentially 180 homes, people across Angola that would be able to benefit from having an additional income with the resolution of this issue. It would mean that Capjuluka Polytechnics and Courses would be free of litigation that has marred its reputation over the years. It would mean the construction of new villas that are proposed, which would translate into construction work and other jobs in various industries. And it would mean money circulating throughout our economy. And so for all of those reasons, Mr. Speaker, the regulations that are here before you today is something that must be done in order for us to move forward, in order for us to move forward in resolving Capjuluka. Because where are we now? We are with a property that has been in litigation for over 25 years, where 26 hotel rooms have been closed for the last 2 years. And each room, Mr. Speaker, employs approximately 3 additional persons. So between 75 to 100 employees across Angola, new employees. There are decreased staff. The crown land on which it sits, and on which it sits there, one of the prime reaches in Angola, has not been able to fully reach its potential. And in short, Mr. Speaker, the existing situation at Capjuluka is a nightmare, and has been a nightmare for successive governments. And where we are now is as a result of poor political decisions, in part, and indeed political ignorance of the previous government to collect monies that would be to the government. Let me clarify. Monies that were collected, meaning that checks between the period of December 2012, Mrs. Speaker, and April of 2015, will amounted to approximately 40 checks that will have been uncashed. Let me break this down a little bit more. If you owe someone $100 and you're contracted to pay them, and you're bound to pay them $100, and they come to you and they give you a check paying you in full, or whatever it is that they owe you of that $100, and you accept, you have the check in hand, but you refuse to cash the check, for whatever reason, whether it's personal, whatever reason, but you have the tender payment to you, and you refuse to cash it, what does that mean when the checks expire? That is the legal position in which this government found itself in, with those checks that have been uncashed from 2012 to 2015. And in fact, they had expired. And so the question is it fair for this government to be saddled with having to deal with an issue such as that, where for 3 years, Capjuluka had an obligation to pay accommodation tax, stabilization levy, and other taxes. And they did tender payment of those taxes. They sat, the checks were received, sat at the Department of Inland Revenue, wherever it was that they were tendered, for years until they became expired. And so you hear listeners and you hear the pundits out there talking, and the criticisms about the amount of money that is paid to us today. And what this resolution doesn't do is it doesn't break down exactly how those figures were arrived at. But when you look between the years 2012 and 2015, you have to acknowledge that the bulk of the money that is are now seeking to address were as a result of money tendered or checks tendered and never paid. And so it is difficult for someone to argue that for political expediency, this government should not go to court to fight on the legal issue as to whether or not Cajulica tendered payment, and when the government refused to cash those checks and accept payment, what is the legal position as to whether it is? And I want the average person to understand that the question is, if you tender payment and you start to pay someone, they refuse to cash it, do you still, what is your obligation to them after they refuse to cash that check? And that is where this government has formed itself. Mr. Speaker, when I look around the country, and when I speak with persons in my constituency and in other areas of my world, I see the difficulties of this. And it means a lot to me, because it is not a decision to be taken lightly. But I also know that our people want to work. They want jobs. They want economic opportunities. They want to improve standard of living, and they want to be able to be comfortable with their lives. And that, Mrs. Speaker, is exactly what we, as a government, what we want to achieve for our people as well. And so, our interests and the people of Angola's interests are aligned. Do we want the property, the Cajulica property, to return to where it was in the days gone by? Yes, we do. Do we want Cajulica fully reopened and back to full capacity with full employment? Yes, we do. It is not a matter of getting away money. It is a matter of resolving long outstanding matters at Cajulica, which sits on one of the best beaches in the world. And so it's easy to stand on the sidelines and criticize, but I ask, where do we go from here? So for instance, impatience with previous government and the unsigned checks. What were their intent? What was their long-term strategy they hold when they refused to accept or cash those checks? Did they think that they would fight for it afterwards? Were they just making it up and reading it? What is the position? In my view, Mr. Speaker, what I understand that the position was, or has been in relation to the previous government, is that their view was that because Cajulica did not have a business license, which was the government issue to determine whether or not issue. But if Cajulica did not have a business license, and therefore it was operated illegally. But although it was mostly operated legally, they were accepting guests. They continued to remain in open with employees and they continued to accept accommodation tax, marketing levy, and all of those other things from persons. And so, why it is that one may want to argue that the hotel was operating illegally, the fact of the matter is that Cajulica ought to have recognized, and it appears that they did recognize, that they owed those monies to the government of Angola at that time. And they tendered that payment to the government of Angola. And it is my view, had we been sitting in that position between 2012 and 2015, we would certainly have accepted the money, we would have cashed the checks. And in fact, once we were elected, I think we took about 2 or 3 of the checks, the ones that were not expired, we quickly went and cashed it to make sure that we obtained those funds. The unexpired checks, there was nothing to do with the. And so, Cajulica's obligation would be to pay, the government's obligation would be to receive and cash those checks, which we did. So, Mr. Speaker, a lot of where we are today, the document here says possible to $11 million from the OPC. But once you go into the explanation, once you understand where it is this money came from, you can kind of understand the situation that this government is in. developed in a way in which it was supposed to for quite some time. And so, Mr. Speaker, for all of those reasons, I stand to be in support of these regulations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Rajman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed a pleasure for me to be standing on this side of the aisle in terms of addressing the issues that surround Captain. Mr. Speaker, in 2010, and I saw my colleague, who's gone, Mr. Hoffman, and we sat on the other side of the aisle. And the member for Road South, member for Valley South, outlined his presentation. And I hope that the general public, that they were paying attention to the dates in which he explained the happenings of Captain. Mr. Speaker, we can play a lot of politics in this. As far as I'm concerned, elections were held in April 2015, and we convinced the vast majority of the people of this country to elect us in office so that we would be able to address, fix some of the issues and problems that this country is facing. And Mr. Speaker, that is a promise made, that is a promise that we've taken very seriously since then. We have to make difficult decisions, Mr. Speaker, that from a political standpoint, they seem to be going against the grain. If we were elected to make those difficult decisions, because we are confident that during this term of office, that some of the rewards for making those difficult decisions will be realized. Mr. Speaker, we look at the motion that is before us. And then we are the numbers. It's somewhere between 6 and 7 million US dollars that we are asking this honorable House to forgive Mr. Speaker at this point. I want to reiterate the member of Valley South and the Chief Minister mentioned. In conclusion, this is reading from the motion regulations. The remission regulations 2 are conditional upon the sale of Captain Luca LLC and of Captain Luca LLC properties of the leasehold property to a third party by September 30, 2016. And says, in other words, it's for this city, this transaction. And Mr. Speaker, as a government, we got to look at the overall picture, the benefits of concluding, Mr. Speaker, this city. Mr. Banks and my other colleagues will explain some of the benefits in terms of having a unified capital going forward. Mr. Speaker, 6 to 7 billion US dollars. We never had it, so we're not paying that. So to speak. And when you compare 6 to 7 million US dollars, we are asked to give in this motion. And when you compare that, Mr. Speaker, to the approximate 35 to 40 million dollars of immediate renovation in that facility, Mr. Speaker. US dollars, it's under the rate. So let's say 7 compared to 35 or 40 million dollars US. It's under the rate. Coupled with that, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that Captain will remain open, goods and services will be available in Angola, and our Angolan employees of Captain will be working. Mr. Speaker, couple that with the taxes that they will have to pay with this transaction. And in addition to that, the potential investment in the development of the property business is in the hundreds of millions of US dollars. So from a political standpoint, it would seem as if the government of Angola, present administration, is giving up $7 million US dollars, a lot of money to give up. But we have to take that in context, Mr. Speaker, with respect to overall development, immediate renovation, goods and services that will be provided, and the long-term overall development, Mr. Speaker, of that particular project. Mr. Speaker, in 2010, I believe it was May or June 2010, I had a presentation in the Rodney MacArthur Ray Auditorium, and the documentation for that, Mr. Speaker, should be in the newspaper. That documentation, Mr. Speaker, gave a chronological view, financial perspective of where Angola was at that particular point. And it looked at revenues that we gave duty-free concessions over the period 2000 to 2010. And Mr. Speaker, in that document, thank you very much, are over $130 million US dollars in the duty-free concessions were given during that period. And we all know what took place in Angola during that period. Whether you call it a bubble, but it was a period in the history of this country, the greatest economic activity would have taken place. The highest revenue would have been realized during that period. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at it, yes, $130 million US dollars with so many needs that we have in Angola. But you have to compare that, Mr. Speaker, with the dollar amount that was invested in Angola during that time. And it was over $1 billion US dollars. So we are comparing and contrasting. If you look at this simply, Mr. Speaker, it would be, oh, the government of Angola is giving away $7 million US dollars. We're giving $7 million US dollars, and we have all sorts of needs and wants in this country. Yes, we do. Yes, we can do well with that immediately. But we're looking at long-term effects and benefits for this particular project and for Angola, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have to turn around this now. And this, a resolution to Luca, for that reason, can be impetus turning around this country, turning around the country in general. That is the way I view Mr. Speaker. So I look at the $6-7 million compared to the hundreds of million dollars that we've invested there and the work and so on. That is my comparison. I'm not taking the simplistic view of this, Mr. Speaker. I'm saying to my people, you have to look beyond the simplistic view when it comes to this. And if we want to look at it simply, we have to look at it realistically and use the numbers. Not on one side of the equation, Mr. Speaker, but on the other side, both sides of the equation. Buffalo Road North, specialist in math, take the simultaneous equations, look on both sides of the equation. Mr. Speaker, and we are not free to make tough decisions. Because we believe that these decisions that you're making really will add to this. Mr. Speaker, the banking resolution which we were facing, tough decisions. Those decisions made the interest of Anglian people looking forward. Mr. Speaker, the property tax, banking resolution, politically unfavorable to any city government. Property tax. No politician likes to talk about increased taxes and we have to make the taxes business expensive. And I'm not happy with the situation and the giving of these funds. One could say, oh, why are you giving away $7 million to capital and increasing taxes and all that? We're looking at long-term. So in order to be able, or people to be able to pay the property tax, we must have economic activity. In order for the bank, Mr. Speaker, to succeed, our people must find jobs and have income so that they can meet their obligations. That's what this is all about, Mr. Speaker. That's what it is. For the bank to succeed, for government to succeed, in terms of resolution, for government to succeed in terms of collecting the property taxes, and have to look at to survive, we have to make the tough decision. And that is the backdrop, Mr. Speaker, of which I want my people to look at this motion, Mr. Speaker. That is what it is. Mr. Speaker, I have a pile of documents here that I want to go through. What I'm going to do is not cut it short, Mr. Speaker. And to go back, Mr. Speaker, to what the Chief Minister mentioned in his presentation. The group concerned citizens, which included Clifton Isles, Sutton Park, Bishop Emerald Brooks. Mr. Speaker, they took it upon themselves to intervene with the Captain Lucas on behalf of the people of Nigeria during those difficult negotiations. And we have to thank. Mr. Speaker, I sat up in the Chief Minister's room. I was invited to meet with named individuals that I listened to. It was the day, I think it was August 27th, I believe, 2012, when we were supposed to come to this house, Mr. Speaker, with a motion to our fire captain. And Mr. Speaker, I was one who agreed that the team should go ahead. Gather the information and have the meet with the various parties, try to negotiate, Mr. Speaker, solution. Mr. Speaker, individuals in the community were concerned, and a lot of us were concerned about our bishop getting involved as part of this team, because it would appear as if it was political. Because we know where Reverend Hayes stood, and of course we know where Mr. Hodge was, or still is, so to speak, in terms of politics. So here you have two politicians, you have the bishop. So you're wondering why the bishop is getting involved. And I know that bishops will have approached the bishop to talk us. And I believe that the bishop, I also believe that Mr. Hodge and Mr. Nye, even though they have political ambition, would have been doing this, whether they have done in the cap, but the overarching belief is that they were trying to see what they could do to bring an amicable solution to the flagship, to the nucleus of our tourism. So, Mr. Speaker, you presented a report. And if you bear with me, I will read this report that is submitted to Executive Council. Introductory statement. The Executive Council of Anguilla and Captain Luca. Mr. Speaker and the people of Anguilla, I don't want you all to view this as being political. Mr. Hodge talking about the high, the front side of the political line. When it comes to Anguilla, credit was given credit. I read the letter. Your Excellency and members of Executive Council, this is the Executive Council of the previous administration, with the leader of government business in that administration, the Honorable Member for Woodson Rebecca. Your Excellency and members of Executive Council, good afternoon. Permit me to begin by expressing our sincere appreciation for the opportunity to meet with you at this time on the Captain Luca affair. We trust that we can be of some help as you search for a creative way forward. We also express our sincere gratitude to the Chief Minister, especially, and to the Legislative Assembly in acceding to our request to afford us the opportunity to intervene in the matter at the 11th hour. So in other words, that motion was already on the order paper, Mr. Speaker, that was supposed to be tabled here in this honorable. And I just would read one of the paragraphs that the Chief Minister read a little earlier from the attorney, Mr. Hickox. And it says, the Chief Minister, and then the Chief Minister, went further and publicly stated on several occasions that the Hickoxes were operating Captain Luca illegally. This was exacerbated by the bringing of a whole unmeritorious motion to the House of Assembly on the 27th of August 2012 for compulsory acquisition of Captain Luca. I want people to understand that. That motion was supposed to come to this House. And at the 11th hour, I put concerned citizens, met with the Chief Minister, self, then member for, I don't know how in the Chief Minister. And the Chief Minister, we must give all credit to him, decided that he'd come to the House and he got a motion. I didn't know whether he had discussed it with the rest of his colleagues. Surely, do the motion from the House and allow those individuals, Mr. Speaker, to carry on with the negotiations, litigation, and so on. I return now to the letter I quote. We are under no illusions about the multitude and complexities of the issues affecting the result. But we felt very strongly that one or more attempt at finding a viable resolution other than compulsory acquisition could do no harm, even if we did not succeed in doing any anticipated improvement. The letter goes on. In addition, we were and still are acutely aware that the significance of Captain Luca to the well-being of Anguilla extends beyond that of the immediate workers and their families, to include the well-being of the island as a whole. We are also very aware that the actions of compulsory acquisition is ugly, acrimonious, litigiously prolonged, and costly. And I emphasize on prolonged and costly. We have time, this point in time. We have the money, this point in time. Prolonged and costly. And Mr. Speaker, we'll move away from that level. And I will come to the very last paragraph of what the Chief Minister mentioned. in the letter from the council. It says, it is to be expected that any further litigation will, like all other litigation in connection with Capital Resort, likely ensued for a lengthy period, during which not only the resort, but Anguilla itself and its attraction as a tourism and investment destination will suffer.
Mr. Speaker,
People of the story must understand the facts, situation, analysis that went into making this decision. That's what it is. Lengthy. And we all know, Mr. Speaker, that Captain Lugo has been in litigation for more than 2 decades. Do we have 2 decades to revive this economy? To make things around this difficult, it's tough. Mr. Speaker. So we have to make this somehow as a government. We have to make it, but not make it a long term. Mr. Speaker, I go on. An alternative resolution, back to the letter of the consensus. An alternative resolution may therefore be in the long run a true in vain. Mr. Speaker, it says, we are disappointed that our request to help level the playing field was declined because your view was that the field was not uneven. So here again, saying to the government executive council that they are disappointed at their request to help level the playing field was declined because in view of that administration, the playing field was not uneven. It went on. However, as it turned out, the more we heard and learned, the more the perception was controlled. And that perception about the unleveled playing field. Indeed, we became quite concerned on hearing about certain activities which are not in the best interest of Anguilla, which will come out in our findings. Our understanding that we were officially withdrawing from the mediation process was intended to be a statement putting some distance between ourselves and any stated or implied intention of the government relative to Capital. It may not have been made as clearly as we wished. We regret that it was so misunderstood, misinterpreted, and misrepresented. But we intend us to establish our independence as a team, being neither agents for nor influenced by the government's position. It was also intended to say to the parties that we are aware of the dynamics of favoritism that will come to the table, and that we will come to the table even-handed, and that we urge and expect the same from them, so that their negotiation can be in good faith. Mr. Speaker, the letter concerned citizens when able to learn. Goes on, it is regrettable that talk show hosts and others are so free to be irresponsible, disrespectful, and misleading over the airways. The fact is that we engage in 4 half days of meetings with the primary stakeholders in Capital and others, and this speaks loudly for itself.
Mr. Speaker, this is coming from individuals.
They goes on. From the very beginning, our motivations are purely altruistic, driven primarily by the deep desire to ensure the well-being of Anguilla, while being fully aware of the catastrophe which can result from a prolonged or permanent closure of Capital. Secondarily, we are cognizant of the fact that investors do expect a reasonable return on their investments, although at times the expected return is not realized, or instead, profit there is a loss. Throughout the entire process of mediation, therefore, our overriding concern has been to identify those steps necessary to ensure that the workers at Capjuluca will be able to return to work without or with a minimum of interpretation or delay. Our objectives were therefore modest but very important. Mr. Speaker, the objectives. One, to ensure Capjuluca will open in time for the beginning of the upcoming season, for the season, like I said. And our objective is to make sure that Capjuluca remains open for the next season, for seasons to come, for improvement overall development. Two, this is from the letter. To facilitate dialogue between Brilla Group and Hickox Group that could lead to a long-term or permanent solution to the problems which plagued the Capjuluca resort over the years, and thereby provide a viable alternative to the government's compulsory acquisition, which could result in very high costs for compensation and liquidation, in addition to other unwelcome and unpleasant. Yeah. Long-term or permanent solutions to the problems that Capjuluca. That is what we are seeking to do, my fellow Angrillians. That is what we are seeking to do with respect to what we're discussing here. Long-term and permanent solution to the problems which plague Capjuluca. We heard about Brilla. We heard about splintering, fractionalization of the property. The unification of that property is a paramount importance moving forward. It has been and will continue to be one of the cornerstones of the new. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that goes on. In preparation for the mediation talks, we held a meeting with several stakeholders, including His Excellency Governor Alistair Harrison and counsel for each of the parties. And we have received numerous suggestions, opinions, and comments. During the 4 days of talks, September 4th, 7th, we had 6 sessions with Brilla Group and Hickox, 3 of which were held with the Chief Minister present and participating, and 1 with Mr. Perrin Paddy present and participating for a while. Since the meeting, we have reflected and are still reflecting on the experience. Mr. Speaker, touch this on the findings. 17 of them in 2 years. I just want to highlight, Mr. Speaker, number 4 and number 9. And I will make sure that the William, we're copying this, printed, people of the world. Read it, please. Number 4 says, there appears to be a strong support from the government of Angola, administrative and executive, for the Brilla Group to take over Capjuluca. This is our conclusion from most interviews and conversations that we have had with the administrative and executive members of government. That can't be a good thing for you. Okay, that's number 4 of the finding. Number 9, the government of Angola's decision to acquire Capjuluca appears to be merely an exercise that will allow the Brilla Group to buy Capjuluca. Mr. Speaker, listen to me. You will read on me. Speaker, this didn't come from any official. These are concerns. I go on, Mr. Speaker, to talk about the concerns of the concerned citizens from the island. There were 6 of them, Mr. Speaker. I mean 6 of them. Number 1, we are concerned about the uncertainty really opening of Captain. I was there. Our decision, Mr. Speaker, we are concerned, Mr. Speaker, about not the opening of Captain for one season. We are concerned about opening the overall development and expansion of Captain so that we can have a significant play in the revenue resources of this country. In addition, Mr. Speaker, to the employment opportunity for people. That is our concern. Number 2, if the hotel remains closed for an extended period of time, this will result in tremendous hardship for the unemployed workers, banking and business as a whole. Speaker, banking and business as a whole. If it remains closed, part of our role is to make sure that this hotel doesn't go. And it's all the negotiations going for that, make sure that it is open for the entire basis of decision will be respected. Number 3, there is a strong possibility that crime will escalate. You have to find work by hand. You got to make sure that our people are able to sustain themselves on their commitments, banks, families, and so on. The deadline for accepting deposits and planning reservations for the 2012 and 2013 season, September. So the whole saga around that particular point is hinged upon having that open and the extension of permanent, long-term, permanent resolution to the country. Number 5, the decision to acquire could result in the loss of investor confidence. No need for explanation. And number 6, the closeness that seems to exist between persons in administration and executive and the real life. Concerns. There was a closeness that exists between real life and administrative executive. Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now I tell you, unify that. Bring all that frustration back together. Chief Minister mentioned about $4.5 billion approved, 20% of the room that must have an impact, Mr. Speaker, on the number of staff employed. Those rooms open, expansion and additional rooms, to that, an addition of employees. Some of them, I'm sure, have done a difference, right? Some of whom I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, want to pay back the taxes. So while we have to take a tough decision with respect to the bank and property taxes, we also have to take a tough decision with respect to capital income to make sure that our people are in a position of the natural sector to meet their obligation. Basis, Mr. Speaker, of this decision going forward. Mr. Speaker, and they have some recommendations. Yeah. One of the recommendations, I will read the motion before the House for the compulsory acquisition of Captain Luca. Be withdrawn. And it was written. We read on a number of things, that the HICOC restore and upgrade Capitol as a five-star luxury resort, flagship of our and Mr. Speaker, there are a number of methods that we on the Hicas's of which were mentioned in the chief's presentation. He spoke about government attempts, that government attempt to frustrate ownership rights, taxes, and so on. Mr. Speaker, there were a number of MOUs in that area. Attempts to defeat us. And I remember, Mr. Speaker, in this honorable house, one day we will have the technology of fire to be rather than repeating, you'll be able to play. And I remember the previous administration stood on the side of the aisle. Proud, they announced that when it took college graduates 18 months to negotiate, they were able to negotiate it. No, non-college graduates, they said, they were able to negotiate it in 1 week. So I'm not surprised that in this situation, remember for Sandy Hill mentioned about the checks that were expired in government's books. Governments. And Mr. Speaker, what I don't understand is that accommodation tax should be paid for what is described as a event. That has nothing to do with the ownership of the result. The interim stabilization levy, Mr. Speaker, has nothing to do with the owners of the result. Why didn't cash these checks? I don't know. But I was told that the government of the day were preparing to compulsory acquire capital. And the mere fact of cashing these checks would have jeopardized their legal position in terms of the acquisition process. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Attorney General is incorrect, please correct. The lease payment, I believe, is related to ownership. Lease payment. And they are just part of what we have to give you. So in other words, take all the payments, and if you're concerned about jeopardizing your case of acquisition, leave with these payments out. Leave out. Because it's here on this present paper, Mr. Speaker, accommodation taxes, $10 million, tourism levy, another 500 something, interim stabilization levy, 1.1 million, trade business application, 500 something, Mr. Speaker. Then it has down here the amount by the Leeward Island Resort Limited for lease payments in the sum of 5 or something. So keep that. And take that. I already checked the you, Mr. Speaker, for $5. I don't have $5 in there. How would you know? Let's check with you, John. I don't have $5 if you don't have to cash it. That's simple. So some of the folks are saying, oh, Captain Luca or the Hicasses didn't have the money. How would you know if they have the money if you hold in the checks and the checks are expiring in your possession? Mr. Speaker, again, and I have a letter here that was sent from the Chief Minister to the media. It was addressed to the Right Reverend Harold Brooks, Reverend Dr. Clifton Island, something called and one of the things, Mr. Speaker, that I don't like to do is just to read what hearts. Sometimes it can be miscorrect. But I would like to read this paragraph from the Chief Minister. So, named individual. We wish to refute your findings that there appears to be a strong support from the government and the administrative and executive for the bill to take over capital. The government of Anguilla has been engaging in matters concerning capital for over 2 years. The government's unwavering position from the start has been that the ownership issues at Katiluka can be resolved by a unification of interest through one common ownership structure that satisfies the interest of all stakeholders. Again, Mr. Speaker, and to my people, a pillar of decision, unification of capital. One can look at $7 million. Mr. Speaker, I go back to publishing date, 20th of August, since 2010. It has here, Mr. Speaker, the then Honorable Chief Minister, and Mr. Adam Era, signing the deal. Left to right, Ministers Walcott, Richardson, Evan Down, Edison Beer, Chief Minister, People Hughes, Adam Era down, Harrison Hayden Hughes, Jerome Roberts, and Violet. Yes. And the captain is government have to look at peace. New MOU to move party forward. And we are here today. August 20th, 8th month, 2010, at 11:25. Capital at peace. New MOU, move party forward. We are here, 2016. And Mr. Speaker, also part of the notes I have here, quoting following Williams, Monday, November 7, 2011, the AU party leader, Mr. Victor Banks, in addressing the nation and Katiluka issue, extended an olive branch to the Honorable Chief Minister Human News and his government to support the government of Anguilla with a strategy to keep Katiluka open. Speaking on behalf of the Anguilla United Front in his capacity as party leader, Mr. Banks stated, and I quote, "The members of the Anguilla United Front stand ready to support the government of Anguilla in any well-thought-out approach which is designed to ensure that Katiluka Hotel remains open. Katiluka Hotel has been the flagship of Anguilla's tourism industry for more than 20 years, and its closure would be a serious blow to the Anguillan economy, especially at a time when we can ill afford to severe any further stresses to our economy. But even more serious is the impact it will have on the over 400 workers and families, many of whom have been employed at Captain Luca for most of their lives, as well as a number of other businesses that provide services to the hotel. It is not an issue that should be used as a football. That still stands. You've got to have a resolution. Goes on to say, in the address, Mr. Banks raised concerns about the approach adopted by the Chief Minister and some of his advisors. Mr. Banks made it clear. Again, I agree. Of serious concern are a number of statements made by the Chief Minister and some of his advisors that seem to imply that it is the fault of the past administration, that there is a conspiracy between the governor and the opposition to bring down the government, that the Attorney General is advising wrongly, and more of the usual conspiracy theories and the name game. At a time when the people of Angola are hurting, and the outcome of this matter is uncertain, it is irresponsible for the Chief Minister to play politics as usual. In fact, it is an extremely dangerous thing to incite workers to believe that a particular individual or group of individuals are responsible for their plight, knowing full well that will unfold. They were dealing with this. God always had a plan. That was in 2010, dealing with the Captain situation. 2015, Hatch all hands this government, which is led by the great government. That's all. I'm hoping, praying, because my old man said to me once that you don't become, a person does not become very deadly by being very nice. But to individuals, tough to these people. But I can assure you, this administration is negotiating half the people of this country. Not only for the immediate person, present, but also for the future, long-term person. In terms of overall development, revenue sources. Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate again what we are discussing today, regulations. It's specific deal with this situation, this act, and these bills. Individuals would say, we are rushing something to the House, leader of the opposition, and no one from the opposition is here. I September 30th, as the member of the Chief Minister mentioned, was May 24th, June 24th, July 24th, August 24th, and now September 30th. Which is why it is. That's 2 weeks. This government. While it is unfortunate that the leader of the opposition and all from the opposition is here, we cannot hold on to some business. We have an opposition. Or the second. This must be hoping. There are no hiccups, so to speak. I don't know.
Thank you. No contributions, we'll go ahead and back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleagues in this Honorable House for their overwhelming support. I mentioned, and so did the leader, the member for Valley North, for the absence of the leader of the opposition of this Honorable House in the presentation of this motion. I assure you that before she would have left on Saturday, Thursday, I spoke with her about the importance of this motion being done, not aware of what time she would be absent, but acutely aware of the importance of this motion being passed in the Honorable House to ensure all the critical moving parts for which government is responsible in the consummation of the single Amen. I need to give voice to the views of the leader of the opposition on this occasion, even though I said to her at that time, the fact that you are not present, I spoke to her in presence of the Honorable Attorney General, because they be out in terms of that discussion. I said to her that on your return, considering the fact that this matter will be debated in this Honorable House in your absence, that we will ensure that you have every opportunity, whether on the basis of a question or on the basis of a motion, to bring this matter back for discussion in this Honorable House. Mr. Speaker, the clerk of the House of Assembly would have circulated a business paper for this Honorable House, as well as other details of the motion today, earlier today. In doing so, he has the responsibility to include the leader of the opposition as well. And his email to her, Mr. Speaker, said to all of us, see attached business papers to today's meeting, along with motion 474, which has been entered into the order book, and which the Minister of Finance will seek to move at today's meeting. The leader of the opposition responded, Mr. Speaker, and I want to give voice to her response. Or, please note that notice of a motion little more than 30 minutes prior to a session of the Assembly is not in compliance with the procedure rules and does not merit suspension of the rules. The draft motion recites that it is in the public interest to remit those levies, taxes, fees, and amounts due to the Crown, unquote. That should be the subject of the debate with the opposition present. The government is clearly that I am off island and have not given sufficient or indeed any detail of the reasons for the proposed remission. They also know that owing to the change of date, the second nominated member is unable to attend. It would be an affront to democracy for this motion to be passed today in these circumstances. I strongly urge the government to think better of the proposal and to reconvene the House after my return to Vancouver on the 6th of October. Regards, Tom Preston. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the essence of what the leader of opposition said in that response to the clerk to the House and others has value. That is that we are here in this honorable House discussing a matter of great importance in our absence. And I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, that in terms of the significance of this motion to resolving issues at Captain Luca that have gone on for the past 25 years, and an opportunity to do that, it is worth a time to take this opportunity here in this honorable House. Do so. Mr. Speaker, it is within your right, after a request from me, to ask the rules of procedure to be suspended to allow a matter of urgency to be brought before this honorable House. And I thank you most kindly for recognizing the significance of this motion and allowing that to take place with that vote to take place with the support of members of this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, this motion is very time sensitive. I would like to thank all the members of this honorable House, my colleagues, who have risen in support of this motion, and therefore proceed swiftly to have it passed in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, this motion comes in the face of the potential threat of further litigation, which I'm confident cannot be resolved in the short term. In addition to the damage claim of $25 million, in addition to all the issues that will stem from a closure of Captain Lugo or the uncertainty of Captain Lugo, as so far presented by the member for Valley South, I think it is necessary that we follow this motion. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Hickox, who is the present owner of 69% of the villas of Captain Luca, is entitled to defend his interests. I'm grateful to Mr. Hickox and the Hickox Group for what they have done over the period to invest in Anguilla's development. Indeed, pointed out in their presentation, their involvement in Captain Luca has been the only involvement that has resulted in bricks and mortar being developed at Captain Luca. Mr. Fabian Marcel Ford, who is a personal advisor to me, not only today, but 36 years ago when I first decided to be involved in politics, despite the fact that we were on different sides of the political equation, sent a document to me regarding, on August 19, 2015, regarding a permanent resolution for Captain Luca. And I would like to quote the last part of that document, that memorandum that he sent to me. He says, Captain Luca will only thrive in the future if the ownership conflict is permanently ended voluntarily with the agreement of the contesting partners. It also may be necessary to shed some of the existing liabilities that have created a serious debt overhang to Captain Luca, pushing the lessee LR underwater and into insolvency. The longer it takes to secure a lasting resolution, the greater the prospect of Captain Luca's operations coming to an end with all the dire consequences. Fabian Marcel Ford, August 19, 2015. Mr. Speaker, I believe in doing what we have done today have fulfilled those obligations of Mr. Ford. So those recommendations of Mr. Ford and the urgency of the issue to him. In addition, I can quote another part of his letter to me. The time is rapidly approaching when Captain Cook would not be able to maintain its luxury status merely by annual maintenance and repair of the facilities. After more than 25 years in operation, the facilities are tired and in need of major physical improvement and revitalization. Mr. Speaker, all that we have done here today, all the presentation that we read, all the history that we have quoted, all the background that we have said, all the reasoning that we have delivered in this other house, all we have tried to make up this, it will be amazing that the very persons in Angola who it is our intention to support in making this decision will be opposed. Mr. Speaker, there are people at Katunuka whose jobs will be lost if we do not do what we are doing. But nevertheless, they will oppose us. Mr. Speaker, there will be taxi drivers, restaurant owners, car rental operations, other businesses that benefit from providing services to Katunuka who will oppose this motion in this House. Mr. Speaker, there are other persons who will need government assistance based on the stability of our economy and our revenues, who require emergency treatment overseas in the future date, or the support of the government of Angola, who will oppose this motion. Mr. Speaker, there will be a number of self-centered politicians who would have previously supported a move to unify Katunuka. Just basically for looking for hope will oppose us. There will be persons who just don't care what happens to Angola once this government is out of office or destroyed. Who will support us? Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, I believe that we have done the right thing, and I thank the members of this honorable House, as well as those Angolans who are satisfied with the action that we've taken before we came to this honorable House, as well as those who will become satisfied with the action that we have taken after we have made this presentation, that in terms of taking this matter forward and ensuring that Angola is placed on a sustainable track for development generally, for the tourism sector in particular, that we have done in the test of all. Speaker, I thank you very much for this opportunity, and I thank members very much for the support.
Thank you. Further debate on this motion. Motion number 474. The question on the back is that this motion be approved as substituted. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Motion number 474 is now a resolution of this House.
Other business, government business.
Mr. Speaker, Let me move that this house stand in the side.